This video will discuss the configuration of what is perhaps my favorite Titan build, the heavy Mangler Nelly. So, why would I choose what is arguably one of the strongest and most accessible Titans to showcase? There's three main reasons. Number one, it is highly accessible. You don't need any in-app purchases or special currencies, and there's no gambling or any time-based artificial scarcity. It's just a regular, medium Titan, and it can be purchased for EC. Number two, it's very powerful, yet also very vulnerable. Watching this video, you'll learn some effective piloting techniques, which will help you to wreak havoc with a Nelly, but can also be used to exploit it. And number three, it's extremely fun to be able to truly scale any surface. The physics system in Battle of Titans means that you can actually climb a wall in a spider bot, and not just dry hump it until you elevate. One quick thing to mention, you might notice that one of the Nellies in this video is black and yellow. This is a Martian Nelly, and it is basically just a custom skin. Martian skins are different in aesthetics only, and do not offer any performance or statistical advantage over the regular Nelly skin, and they are only available as a prize to a competition. Throughout this video I'll use two Nellies. The Martian is a T3 heavy armor APFS with accelerators with a top speed of 41 km an hour. It's running full EM circuits T3 and Manglers, all with 3 magazines and 1 reinforced ammo. I'm also running all feeding gear on my javelins so that I can shoot missiles as frequently as possible. Adversely, the regular skin Nelly is a T2 to provide some contrast, running all T2 heat, jump capacitors all at T2, and EM circuits also at T2. And even though I could run T3 weapons, I'm still running T2 Manglers here, also with 2 magazine T2 and 1 reinforced ammo T2. And not to mention T2 feeding gears on my javelin. And with all of that said, let's look at the 3 core mechanics that will allow you to customize your Nelly to your liking. Starting with number 1. Leg accelerators versus jump capacitors. Accelerators make it easier to change position behind cover, which can assist with stealth, attack, and retreat. Move as much as you can by walking to hide behind cover, and then save the jump for the final moment to close the gap and inflict heavy damage from close range. Capacitors, on the other hand, mean that to move quickly you'll need to jump often. This tends to give away your position and makes stealth difficult, if not impossible. But as you'll see from this speed test, that a T2 jump capacitor Nelly is more than a match in terms of speed over distance when compared to a fully equipped T3 accelerator Nelly. You can also do jump shots from behind cover, which can be especially effective if you're using automation on your weapons, which will allow you to unload the magazine quickly before dropping back behind cover. The choice between accelerators and capacitors is further complicated by the class of armor you will run, but in the case of a Mangler Nelly, my recommendation is to run a predominantly heavy armor setup. This limits your speed, but significantly increases your Titan's resilience to damage. There are other leg options, such as jump accelerators, which propel you further with each jump, and leg armor, of course, which reinforces your leg strength, but I will not be covering those in this video. So, with either accelerators or capacitors in mind, the next primary factor you should consider is the type of armor resistance specialization. Which brings me to point number 2, armor choice. Heat or APFS, or regular. I will assume that you've watched Salty's Bot 101 videos, so you know the difference between the armor types. The abridged version is heat, stops explosive damage, APFS is bullet damage, and regular just has more hit points rather than a specialized resistance. And making a choice is the case with any Titan, and of course whatever you choose depends on your playstyle and whether you want to specialize against a certain type of damage, or just be generally resistant to everything. With a Mangler Nelly in mind, the primary damage you inflict will be APFS, which relies on getting as close as possible to your opponent, which is known as brawling. So choosing to be a specialist in one damage resistance is going to have 2 potential use cases.
Choosing to specialize in heat resistance is good for defending against sting and javelin attacks while you're closing the gap. It's also ideal for confronting Sarissa or Vulcan-equipped opponents. Alternatively, choosing to specialize in APFS resistance is more useful for the actual confrontation of opponents who are also using APF weapons. Of course, the new laser-equipped Titan, Ilya Muromets, will be released at some point, which will introduce a third damage type, which I believe is a different type of heat damage whereby the laser cooks the opponent over a period of time. But little is known about it, at least at the time of this video. However, it is possible that resistance or resilience against any new damage type may be absorbed into the existing armor classification that does not have a heat or APFS specialization. But at this point, it's just speculation and conjecture. And the next and last build option to consider is number 3. Your Mangler configuration. As is the case with all weapon and module configurations, there are various advantages and drawbacks to any given combination. My recommendation for an ultra-heavy Mangler Nelly is to use 2 magazine and 2 reinforced ammo, or 3 magazine and 1 reinforced ammo. Having a large magazine capacity is of benefit for more ammo to pump out when you're exposed. This also means that you can use a quick burst to taunt your opponent and then goad them into making a move, under the false impression that you're going to need to reload. For an ultralight Nelly, I'd recommend automation and reinforced ammo, so maybe 2 automation and 2 reinforced, or 3 automation and 1 reinforced. Having that automation helps to unload your entire magazine in a very quick burst, thus minimizing your exposure time. Number 4. Shearing off weapons. With the sheer firepower of quad manglers at your disposal, you can very quickly focus fire on your opponent's weapons and make very short work of them. This is often preferable to firing directly at their tower, but it requires being very close for it to be fast and effective. If you can get close enough to perform a surgical weapon removal, learn different patterns to remove the weapons quickly. Think of this as a training reflex maneuver which allows you to quickly disarm your opponent. If you've done any form of martial arts, this should sound familiar. For example, the Comrade. If it's airborne, attack an engine first, and if it's landed, first remove the medium sign-mounted weapons, then focus fire on the center bottom to remove the light weapons. The MAO. Go for the 2 medium side weapons and then the top. Or, if you're attacking from side on, go for the side mount and then the top. Then when available, attack the other side. Something to note here is that a good player will always attempt to shield their remaining weapon by turning their tower to keep it out of your line of fire. For the Tirpitz, go for the wings first, as they have a greater reload potential and are the quickest to destroy, and then focus fire at the Inquisitor. In terms of Tirpitz stripping, proceed as above, but ideally wait until the Tirpitz is already engaged, or has already spent some of its Inquisitor fire, then close the gap. If the Tirpitz takes some shots at you, it's usually best to keep the pressure on, as reloading the Inquisitor takes time, and if you retreat to cover, you'll just give it time to reload. With the added knowledge that it is being hunted, taking off an Inquisitor may take 2 or 3 reloads, in which case, use your jump while reloading to avoid being an easy target. The safest place to avoid fire from the Inquisitor is directly next to the Tirpitz, so that its wing stanchion comes between the turret and your Titan. When stripping a Tirpitz of its weapons, and depending on the phase of the moon, I will sometimes leave them with 1 hammer or Sarissa. This makes the pilot feel like they still have a chance to cause some damage. When going head-to-head with another Mangler Nelly, wait for them to jump and begin unloading before making your move. If they confront you head-on, try to dance on the edge of cover so that their bullets won't connect, then reappear when they're reloading. Aim to the side of their tower to strip 1 or more of their Manglers. Reducing their damage output is critical for your survival. Number 6. Close the gap and attack at close range. I have mentioned this already, but it's really worth repeating. Always try to wait until your opponent is at the closest possible range before attacking, and ideally before revealing your presence. Then focus fire on their weapons and then their legs. Number 7. Actively use objects or opponents as cover. When facing multiple opponents, plan your maneuver so that you will not be exposed to more than one opponent. You can achieve this by choosing your jumps to ensure that you can move from cover to cover. If your opponents are all out in the open, try to maneuver so that you can keep one opponent in front of the other, reducing your exposure to incoming fire. If your opponents are trying to draw you out into the open, resist the temptation to leap out and engage them at maximum distance. Either stay your ground or attempt to flank. If you do stay put, you can quietly hide and not reveal your position. Your opponent may then think you are flanking and in turn compromise their position, allowing you to make a move. Number 8. Avoid rage dropping. If you've just been defeated, especially at the hands of a light titan, resist the temptation to drop your Nelly back into an occupied spawn point. Unless the match timer is almost depleted, or you know details about the enemy's capacity. Dropping a fresh titan into a spawn point, only to get instantly EMP'd and relieved of some or all of your weapons, is extremely frustrating, and only hands free points to your opponents. Number 9. Javelin dodging. When you see an incoming javelin coming your way, the best strategy to dodge it is to just jump directly up at the very last second. This will throw off the javelin's tracking trajectory, usually sending it flying over your head. Number 10. Jump over your opponent in a close-range brawl. When brawling at close range, use your jump to leap directly over your opponent. Jumping will help to throw off their aim and make it harder for them to track you to line up another shot. I particularly like to perform this maneuver when I need to reload. Number 11. Master your camera orientation when changing surfaces. This can be a pain when you're transversing obstacles and your titan starts walking backwards when you wanted to walk forwards. The cure for this is to orient your camera so it's the same angle as your titan as if you were standing upright. If you attempt to leverage the camera view to track your opponent and your titan goes upside down, inverse direction controls will apply. This can be very confusing, especially when you're under pressure. Number 12. Enhance your situational awareness. If you are unable to play with headphones or with the volume up, constantly check your 6 to see if a Might or a Shon or any titan for that matter is trying to sneak up on you. If you are able to use headphones, do yourself a favor and turn up the volume. If not just to appreciate all of the sound effects and audio engineering that's gone into making all of the mechanical sounds, you'll be able to hear all of the footsteps and movements in your surrounding area, which will often give you the drop of when an enemy is trying to flank an attack. That's it for me now. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any requests or suggestions, please let me know. See you on the battlefield.